Welcome to the Old Lady Hour with Lorrie and Sheryl. On today's episode, we're here with our friend Scott McQueen, fellow artist and all around, I'd say, Renaissance man as well. He's an author, speaker, because he's speaking to us, and
I can speak.
And so we're really happy to have him. The first question I have is just the most trivial and most obvious one you probably get asked about all the time.
Okay, shoot.
Do people call you Steve, and do they get you mixed up?
They call me Steve all the freaking time. I had somebody yesterday, and it's not just random people. Businesses.
Oh yeah.
I was talking to somebody the other day or yesterday, and they were like, and Steve, and I said, whoa, wait a minute. I said he didn't leave me any money, so we're not giving him any credit. I said, this is Scott.
Yeah, I just wondered if that was like kind of annoying. I actually looked up. There is a Scott McQueen who's the son of Steve McQueen.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I had my second grade school teacher, Fayette Elementary School. She was Mrs. Fowler. We'll go just as far as that. Mrs. Fowler must have been a Steve McQueen fan. That would have been in 1970.
Sure, so that's about.
He's still in full swing prime.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1970, I'm in the second grade, and she has on my report card, Steve McQueen.
Oh no.
She called me Steve every single day.
Oh no.
I would try to correct her, and finally I started answering to Steve. And then my mother would she'd freak out about it.
Right.
She didn't really know, but my mother was serving as a volunteer room mother, and so she was there for a Christmas, a little Christmas party. And Miss Fowler kept, Steve, would you come and do that? Blah, blah, blah. And Steve, you need to get in on. And my mother was like, it's Scott. It's Scott. It's Scott. And then, she called me Steve all year. She just could not get it out of her head. So
I've told a story, with when Superman was big. I also got married to Alan Lane. I became Lorrie Lane, but yes, I had people call me Lois.
Lois Lane.
So it's not so much anymore. But there's a new movie coming out, and I'm like, here it comes.
It may start up again.
It's going to start up again.
Yep.
Anyway, but we
You can tell people's age when they're taught a lot. The people that call me Steve McQueen,
they must be
are
older. Yes.
And the people that are younger actually call me Lightning.
Lightning McQueen. Okay.
I have a lot of people
because
call me
that's
Lightning.
From the Cars.
The Cars, right.
That was a great movie.
It was.
So I think that's better. Lightning's better.
I almost asked what cars.
There's a... Come on. Well, so if you have kids, you've probably seen the Cars movie with, is it Tow Mater? The tow truck? Tow Mater?
I just know that Lightning McQueen is a red sports car. Yeah.
It was a fun movie.
Right.
Okay, but it's pop culture, so.
Yeah, it's also like kids. So
right.
So yeah.
And I do confess I have called Scott Steve several times.
See, we're old
right.
because we're old ladies, and so that's part of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was just kind of a trivial thing, but
break the ice.
We got it out of the way. It is Scott.
It is today.
So I wanted to ask you about growing up in Fayette, and I know you've talked about like meeting with Jimmy Lee Sudduth or working with him,
right.
And so I'm just curious about how that, how'd you meet him? Was that where you got your first interest in art? Because that's that's kind of an unusual thing, I think.
Well, it's unique and kind of a blessing of sort.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't realize when all of us who grew up in Fayette during those days, we didn't realize that we were around folk art greatness, so to speak. Really,
sure.
we thought quite the opposite.
Yeah, it's just like Jimmy down the street.
Well, yeah, Mr. Jimmy. And I didn't see much of him when I was really young. My first encounter with Jimmy Sudduth, he would come to our first grade classroom. and only come to the door, and our first grade school teacher, Mrs. Patterson, would carry an old Maxwell House can full of broken chalk, and she would pour it into a bag, a brown bag that he would have, and he collected chalk from the school teachers.
Wow.
Back in those days, chalk was big.
Yes.
You know, you'd have one of those contraptions that they would put like 5 or 6
Yep.
you know, chalk pieces in and draw and do horizontal across a chalkboard, and then you would go and do the alphabet, learn the alphabet.
Sure.
So there were kids such as myself that were just destroying chalk left and right.
Yes.
Jimmy Lee Sudduth knew this, and he was the collector of chalk, because you know he used quite a bit of that in his artwork. So at any rate, that was first exposure to Mr. Jimmy. The next year, we took a little field trip out to the front of the school, just literally walked out the door and just sat, and he sat in a chair and mud painted a house that was across the street from the school, and we were able to sit around him while he sat in a old lawn chair and painted a house.
Okay.
And so he kind of did a lot of that, you know, from the things that I always heard growing up was that, you know, when he was younger, he would cut grass for people, and then he would go and paint their house and go knock on the door and say, hey, would you like to buy a painting of your house? And and what's crazy, from people that have told me, being honest, they would say, well, we just kind of felt sorry for him and we would get it. Now, this was old head. This was like the older people. None of those people are even living.
Right.
But I had an older man who told me that one time. He says, I just got it because he said, didn't realize that I was, you know. And I said, well, what'd you do with it? And he said, I probably threw it away. But that's the way it is.
But
you know?
yeah, well, and I think with every artist, when we're starting off, no one knows that we're going to be anything.
Nobody even thinks.
We don't know.
Right. And Jimmy didn't carry himself like he knew. I mean, it was just.
It's just like, and I think that for most artists, they're really compelled to do art. They don't really care.
Right, not in it for trying to.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're in art trying to make a buck, you're
right. Or, you know, it's just like, you really just care about doing more.
Right.
That's it.
It's just a drive.
Yeah, that's it.
It is for me, and and it was for Mr. Jimmy. But not only did we grow up around Jimmy Sudduth, but also grew up around B.F. Perkins, Brother Ben.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, you know, he's a very notable folk artist.
Very much.
And his stuff's becoming a lot more collectible. And then there was a whittler named Fred Webster, who was a former principal, I think, at Berry or Hubbartville. It was one of those little smaller schools that was in Fayette County. And when he retired, he started whittling, and he became extremely well known. And his stuff is super collectible. So there were folk artists all over, crawling all over Fayette.
That's really interesting. I wonder why a particular place will have that. You know, if maybe it's just one person is doing more, and so it inspires others, or
I think Sudduth probably, and this is conjecture.
That's all right.
But I figure as a kid, Sudduth probably drew a lot of attention as he became more popular. And he drew attention in part because there was the editor of the old broadcaster newspaper. His name was Jack Black.
Okay.
And
not
the Jack, but yeah,
different
but
Jack
people
Black.
did call him Jack Black.
Sure.
You know, they did.
Yeah, sure. Why not?
So it'd have been much easier if my mom had just named me Steve. But you know,
Well,
another story back then. Yeah. But anyway, but Jack Black, he helped people discover Jimmy Sudduth early on, and he took an interest, and so their entire family appreciated art and the arts.
So really patrons and
They were right, but
and
they were
advocates.
But he had the opportunity, having that newspaper, he could take a photo of it and put it and write an article and then get that article out and get
Okay.
it to other places.
Right.
It, from what I understand, he was very instrumental in getting Jimmy Sudduth to New York City, to ultimately to the Metropolitan Museum of
Sure.
Art. You know, there were a lot of connections there, so that helped. And there was a little sleepy art show that, for Fayette Arts
Right.
Festival that actually started the year before Kentuck.
Okay.
So it'd been around and still is around. It has changed and morphed a little bit, but in its heyday and in early days when Sudduth was around, you had Jimmy Sudduth, you had Fred Webster, you had Ben Perkins, and then a host of other artists. And there were artists who were coming from near and far to be in that show because of name recognition, and they knew that there were going to be people coming from all over, and they did.
They did. Oh, yeah.
And so it really did, I think it helped out every one of them exponentially.
Sure.
So
in that atmosphere probably created more people who were interested in art who didn't
Right.
even know, that was a possibility, which that's what I was asking if that
Right.
influenced you.
well, no, I can't really claim that it was the, here's the thing that caused me to want to do the folk art. What it did was being exposed to all of that as a young person. You're familiar. You become familiar with folk art. It's not like a,
It's just
three-headed monster.
Right.
It's folk art's kind of strange. Sometimes I'll tell folks, well, it's kind of an acquired taste. Whatever traffic of art one appreciates. Some people look at abstract and they love it, and there's others that look at abstract and they're like, I don't get it.
Right.
And then there's folks who, look at the same thing. They'll look at Jimmy Sudduth or a Mose T,
they're like,
and they're like, what? The thing I normally get is people. I had a man one time in Atlanta who came to me and he said, my 5-year-old could do better than that. And I said, well, you need to go to Hobby Lobby today and
That's
get some
right.
paint
Get that
and get that
5-year-old out.
5-year-old going, because I'm doing this full time. And I said, you might need that in your retirement.
There you go. Well,
So-
part of the goal is to paint like a child because they're so free.
It is. Folk art itself is kind of a naive type,
But
innocent art.
yeah.
And I guess in some ways all art is to be free, to be yourself.
I guess my philosophy of art is just art. You can put it into different categories, but I feel like if it's art, it just speaks. It's something that speaks to you. Visual art is. It.
Right.
I don't care about the category and.
Right. You either like it or you don't.
Yeah, and there's some things that are more appealing to me than others. That's fine, But in creating it, I don't feel like I have to do the same thing over and over again.
Right.
So I don't. But
Well, I love
yeah.
the innocence of folk art.
and so when, I know you had a career as pastor.
Oh yeah.
A long career.
Right.
And did you? I'm going to go into it, but I'm going to stick with the art for right now. Did you do art on the side while you were a preacher?
Right. Well, I will backtrack enough to say this. When growing up, there's something that was innate in me about wanting to draw, wanting to.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if I could have spent half of the energy and time trying to learn X, Y square as opposed to drawing a cat or a dog on my
Okay.
on my loose leaf paper, I was.
Did you take a lot of art classes?
They didn't offer art classes at Fayette.
Okay.
You'd think with all the folk artists and everything there, I didn't have an art class. They just didn't have that. They didn't have art class. They didn't have and I think maybe when we were little kids, we'd have some time for music and, coloring. But it wasn't an art class. And there certainly wasn't that when we moved up. but I was all the time drawing and doodling and and my mind would be running and racing to things, and whatever I would see in my mind, I would draw. And
Was there anyone in your family that did anything like that?
My dad was, if he had lived, I mean, he lived to be 82, but he worked full time at an automotive plant there in Fayette. That's what brought us to Fayette.
Okay.
We weren't there for lifelong.
Okay.
Our parents and grandparents and that sort of thing. We moved to Fayette when I was 2 years old. I was actually born in Columbus, and that wasn't home. That was just my dad and mom and older brother moved to Columbus, and he took a job there waiting for this automotive plant to be built.
Columbus, Mississippi. Okay.
And when it was built, we moved from Columbus to Fayette, which is about 40 miles. So he was just there waiting in the wing, but Dad was in management, and but he was a tool and die guy. He was kind of hands-on engineering kind of mindset, but he loved to paint.
Okay.
He loved to draw, and when he was I don't know, probably about 50 to 60, he started painting. And my older brother moved out. He's 10 years older, and he moved out, went to college and whatever, and then Dad turned the spare bedroom into an art studio. And so, but Dad painted with oils.
Yes.
But it was still folksy. It was more of he did home places.
Okay.
Like Dad would paint like old cabins and the babbling brooks and the streams and the mountains in the background, or the cotton fields or the ocean. And Dad would paint a lot of stuff that was from his memory.
Okay.
So Dad was, I was like the afterthought kid. Dad was 45 when I was born.
Okay. Yeah.
Dad was born in 1918, so he lived through Depression.
Sure.
And he lived all that sort of stuff, And so I got a unique perspective of just as a father figure there.
He was always an older father.
Yes. And my older brother was 10 years older. He ended up being like the one that would go out and play ball with me and that sort of thing. Dad was, but Dad always loved to paint, and has quite a few oil paintings out. I saw one not too long ago. I was at an estate sale, and I was like, there's one of Dad's paintings. I was going to get it, but somebody was just purchasing it at the moment. And I was like, well, at least somebody still appreciates it.
That's great.
And I've got several at the house, and there's a lot of people who had. But Dad used to do the Fayette show. As a matter of fact, I think he did Kentuck one year, and complained about it had cost too much, and this is years ago. Cost him, but so I'll just do that Fayette festival.
That's really
but
funny.
That was funny, but that was like in the 70s.
So that kind of planted the seeds for you doing this full time in a way.
It felt normal to have, and so I kind of grew up in that, but I never thought of doing it as a career, and I didn't really do a lot of it, but. In ministry, or at least for me, I was in small churches, medium-sized churches, not many large, certainly none of these like today, but you didn't have a lot of that kind of thing back in the day.
Not the mega churches.
No, that wasn't even a thing back when 80s, 90s, even maybe the early 2000s, it started moving to that. But we won't go there. But I was in small, medium-sized churches. But in those churches, a lot of times, especially the early ones, if bulletin boards were needing to be put up and information advertised, somebody had to draw, somebody had to, and so
there were a lot of art opportunities.
There were a lot of opportunities for me just to go and do something that I enjoyed doing, and it wasn't beneath me in my mind,
Right.
I wasn't beneath me to go do that.
Here's a great opportunity. Well, and historically, the cathedrals, they are covered with art.
Oh,
so.
yeah. Beautiful art museums in and of themselves.
Yeah, so. So then, and I guess you had a long career as a minister.
I did. I was a pastor, and for 31 years, and then a hospice chaplain for 3.
I think that's when I actually met you, when you were a hospice chaplain. You had a show at Kentuck in the Clark building.
Right.
And that's the first time I think I met you and saw your art, and I was like, I thought it was great. So,
Well,
and here we are now.
Well, I really, other than just the occasional board or whatever that I would work on, or kids making backdrops for Easter pageants and Christmas pageants, and I did a lot of that kind of thing, and all these little fall festivals and Halloween carnivals or whatever they wanted to call it, making props and what have you for that. Other than that, I wasn't doing anything, but I was a workaholic. I mean, I worked a lot. I'd work on my off days, and so I did. And I finally had people, in the church that were in leadership that were like, "You've got to take your off day." And I'm like, I don't want to sit around the house. I don't like working in the yard. I'll do it if I have to. I'll cut the grass. But I'm not planting a garden, and I'm not doing all of this and yada yada. And so I enjoyed being down here. They were like, "You're going to enjoy it doing something else because you're down here all the time. We don't think it's healthy for you." And by the time all that was coming along, I was also starting to get just a little bit, a little arthritis here and there in my knee. I'm like, I'm not going to play golf. All that does is make me mad.
Sure.
And there's no way I'm chasing a tennis ball around. I'm just not doing it. And my wife didn't like to play tennis or anything, and I wasn't going to go find somebody just to play, swat a ball. So short was, I was in the house, and my wife, who's always been artsy and craftsy, kind of both, she's always painting on something, doing something. She had a bunch of little craft paints out, and she was doing something. And I had a bunch of wood that I had gathered, really was going to throw it away, just some old wood, had odds and ends on it. And I had a gazillion car tags, license plates, because we had moved into a new house, which we've been in now 17 years, but we had just moved in, and I had a stack of auto license plates because I wanted to fill a wall with them.
Okay.
Just like I had seen at one of these restaurants.
You weren't running a chop shop or something.
No. And so
on the side.
No. And so I had all these car tags, and so I just started cutting the lettering out, and I thought, well, I can get some glue or something and glue and make it cool and make a little something. So I did, and that's so I was doing that. But I was still at the church, and so I would have people at the church would come to the house, and they'd see it, and they'd say, "Man, I like that," and then I'd take it off the wall and give it to them.
Okay.
And that's what I'd do, and then I'd make me another, and then I'd have somebody else come take it off. Somebody else would come over. "Can you make me one?" I'd say, "Just take this one. It's easier just to do that. I don't know how many I'm going to make." So after so many, I finally was like, I bet I could sell these. And my wife is like, "Duh, how many have you given away?" I said, "I don't even know." And so I started doing that, and then that was in 2011.
Okay.
And so it's not
like a
lot of artists who've been at it for all their whole life. So the first thing that I did was I went to I signed up for the Fayette.
Okay, because there it was.
There it was, and I knew Fayette, and it had already changed a lot. It's changed even more, but none of the old heads were there. But there were some folk artists and some people there, and I really didn't know any of them. But I went and I put my stuff in there. About half the way driving, because we were still, we were living here. and driving to Fayette about half the way, about the time you turn off on the old Fayette County Road, Lake Road, County Road 26.
Way up there.
I got right there and I came so close to turning around. I was like, I'm just going to forget this, because it only cost it may have gone up a little bit. It was only like $30 or something to get in the show. And so I was like, I'll just eat that, forget it. I said, I'm embarrassed.
You lost confidence.
Yeah, I was scared. And what I was scared of was what people would say. I really, that's the hardest for me. And what I tell artists now, one of the hardest hurdles to somehow get over and run through is just one's own confidence or lack of, and being a self-critic.
Yes. Oh yeah, definitely.
Because that's the whole thing. It's the self-critic. It's we're like, man, this stuff, it sucks.
You just, sometimes, to make it, you have to turn that voice off.
Yeah.
But then when there's other people around, it's like, oh no, they're going to see it.
It comes back on. That voice comes on, and
And then, after, at this point for me, I've been doing this so long, it just there is, I say every day I go through the same sort of thing where, in the morning I'm ready to go. I'm pretty confident. By the afternoon, I'm I don't even know why I call myself a painter. I'm just ready to check it all, and none of this is good. And then, it kind of settles in by the end of the day. I have that same, every single day.
I think most artists battle. It's just an inner turmoil.
And if they don't, I'm not really sure what's wrong with them. Because
I don't know. But I think what it does, though, for me at least, is it brings out the best.
Yes,
it brings out the best.
Otherwise you'd be complacent, and
because you're always, you wake up in the morning and you're like, I really want to create something that makes me happy.
And for me, it's always it's always exciting.
Right.
I'm not bored. If I get bored with what I'm doing, I need to step away for a minute, or I need to get a new paint color, or just switch it up a little bit.
Right. Yeah. There's days now. There's parts of the process that I like more than others.
Yeah. Because it's practical. It's creating objects.
The prep work for me sometimes is that's a little mundane. Painting something, because I paint only on wood and tin. I've never used a canvas in my life, so I don't know anything about that.
All right.
Never painted on a canvas.
You maybe should try it.
Yeah, I don't know. I've done it so long. I don't want to, But you're having to prep the wood, the sanding of the wood and all of that to get the splinters off, and barn wood and whatever. That's not real. That's not, to me, it's not fun. But now if I turn on some music and I'm sitting out on the porch sanding, then it's
just the
therapeutic.
Flow. It is. So so your choice of materials is all just, you don't go out and buy new things to put.
Very seldom.
Except for the paint.
Right, the paint for sure. I paint with acrylic, and but there are times. Sometimes I make sometimes my own little frames, and I'll run down to one of the little.
Oh, sure.
Suppliers, somewhere at Lowe's or somewhere, and get, buy some wood. And there's times when I, if somebody's wanting something a certain way, and okay, but I try to use barnwood and old planks that come from houses. And
so that gives what you do kind of a history outside of yourself.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it just appeals to me. Well, actually, that's one of the, going back to something we talked about a while earlier, one of the things that I remember Mr. Jimmy Sudduth saying to me one day was, he said, I asked him, I said, well, what makes a folk artist, or what makes a folk artist a folk artist? Because my dad painted, but Dad never really called himself a folk artist. And he painted on canvas, he used oils, painted country scenes, but you could look at Dad's stuff and you could look at Mr. Jimmy's stuff, and there was just a difference in all of it. And what would piss my dad off was that I kind of liked Mr. Jimmy's, and I would tell him so, but not often. I made the mistake of telling him one time at the art show, because there was so many people. As always, if Sudduth was at a show, everybody was around him, and he was selling them faster, like hotcakes. And I remember my dad, I was sitting over there with my dad, and Dad said, "Look at all those folks over there." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I like his." And Dad's like, "Hey," it's just, "Hey." And I was like, "Well, I like yours too, Dad." I said, "But I said, there's something about it." I just like the rawness.
Yeah.
And so, but I asked Mr. Jimmy one time, because I had a friend who introduced me to him, and schoolmate that one summer he told me he could take me to his house if I'd ride my bike to a certain place in town. He could meet me there on his bike, and we'd ride out. And it was a good little ride. But we got out there to his house, because I lived on the other side of town, complete other side of town. Mm-hmm. But in those days, nobody cared.
Sure.
Mom would send you out of the house and say, "Just be back by dark."
That's right.
It literally was that way.
Right.
So, anyways, I rode to his house, and so I asked him one time on one of those occasions, I said, "What makes you a folk artist?" I said, "My dad, paints." And I said, "But he's not." He says, you paint with what," he said, you paint with what you got, and you paint what you know. And something along that line. You paint what you got, you paint what you got, and you paint what you know. And it was a real quick answer, but and I've thought about that a lot, just.
Well, and you're not using a preconceived notion of what art is.
It was just
it's your expression.
It was just, but a lot of what Mr. Sudduth and a lot of artists, just in general, a lot of it is memory art. We
That's
paint
right.
the things what we know, the places we've seen. And so that, for me, I incorporate that. So when people ask me what inspires you, and I tell folks, really it's my life and my surroundings.
It's just
the happenstances,
who you are.
right? And I just paint that. I try to paint from a perspective of experience.
Yes. And that's, basically what I've been doing a lot of, particularly with like the landscapes.
Right.
People ask, where is that a particular place? And I'm like, well, it's kind of just here. When I'm painting, I'm not looking at anything.
Right.
I'm just like, well, there's a lot of lakes and rivers and trees, and I'm just thinking of them. And that's it. I'm just thinking of them.
Well, and that's.
Okay, and so I'm getting a note from our producer that we should take a break, and we'll come right back.
Hi, we're not really going to come right back. We're going to end this episode for now because we have enough content from Scott that we're going to do 3 episodes. So come back in a few days and we'll have part 2 of 3 parts with Scott McQueen. Thank you.